let's talk about the persecution of Riley Gaines. Now, I want to say that Riley Gaines is a champion in more than one sense. She's a swimming champion, and she's also a champion of common sense, as you will see. But speaking of championship, let us move. You can visit our website, lotuseaters.com. And with only £5 a month, you can have access to our premium content, such as the latest video of the symposium we did together on Nietzsche's book called The Gay Science. And he is talking about, in a sense, grabbing life by its horns. Is that the correct expression?
Yes, yeah. He's not talking about homosexual empiricism, though.
Yes.
I would suggest the trans activists probably should look into that a little bit more.
Yes, so it's worth it. Go and have a look. Okay, now let's go back. Riley Gaines is a 12 times All-American swimmer at the University of Kentucky. She holds 5 SEC titles. We were trying to find, we came across many acronyms of the SEC. I think it is Southeastern Conference title. John helped me very much with it. If it's mistaken, it's my fault. Also, she had plans to pursue a dental degree. You can visit her website here and, check more information about her. Now, the thing is that lately she was involved in various controversies. And we will talk about it. We will give plenty of context to talk about why she was recently persecuted and what happens after, what's the aftermath. Okay, so one thing is that she is swimming, I think, she's around 23 years old. And I was checking some of her interviews, and she says that she has been swimming, and her father was an athlete ever since 4 years old. So she does have the athletic virtue and the athletic disciplined mindset.
It's a lifelong passion.
Yes, it is a lifelong passion. And I remember she was saying that she was training for 6 hours a day. So it's a lot. It takes plenty of effort. And she was trying to combine this with studies as well. Now, she was swimming for the National Collegiate Athletic Association. And she had some issues with them, because they took some decisions that I think I agree with her when we say that they are controversial ones. Now, let's look a bit on the website of the National Collegiate Athletic Association. It is a member-led organization dedicated to the well-being and lifelong success of college athletes. NCAA schools award nearly $3.5 billion in athletic scholarship every year and provide vast support to help student athletes graduate at a rate higher than their general student peers. We have more than 500,000 college athletes across all 3 divisions compete for about 1,100 member schools in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and even Canada. Okay, now if we go to the next link, I want to look a bit on the priorities or the values that NCAA is supposed to be in favor of.
You'd think it would be meritocracy, competition, fairness, right?
Yeah, and if we scroll down a bit, where it talks about participants, it says focus on participants. If we can...
There we go.
Yeah, a bit up, please. Yes. Division 3 athletics departments place special importance on the impact of athletics on the participants rather than that of the spectators. The student-athlete's experience is of paramount concern. Now, I want us to examine whether this is a double standard, and I think that it is pretty obvious that it is, because they don't care about participants in general. Maybe they have an agenda that they want to put forward. So what happened is that Riley Gaines swam against Leah Thomas.
Yes.
In 2022.
Obvious woman.
And I think what happened was that when Leah Thomas won the 500-yard freestyle, and I think he broke the records there. And also they tied on a 200-yard freestyle. But the NCAA decided to give the first award to Leah Thomas. And Riley Gaines confronted them, and she asked them, why do you think that this should happen? And they told her basically, for photographic reasons, we want Leah Thomas to have the award. That turned her into an activist, and she is championing also common sense now, I would say. And she's talking about, she is arguing against the inclusion of biological males into women's sports. And she talks a lot about the legislation that the Biden administration is trying to push forward, and focuses a lot on the sharing of locker rooms with biological males. Because as she was saying in an interview, it's not an issue of going in, changing about a minute or two and just leaving. It takes a long time to change, especially when you have to get into the proper outfit to run into these matches. So let us watch this clip of what she says.
In addition to being forced to give up our awards, our titles, and our opportunities, the NCAA forced female swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old male who was fully intact with male genitalia. Let me be clear. We were not forewarned. We were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent. If nothing else, I hope you can truly see how this is a violation of our privacy and how some of us have felt uncomfortable, awkward, embarrassed, and even traumatized by this experience. I know I don't speak for everyone. It's impossible to speak for everyone, but I can attest to the tears that were shed on that pool deck by these poor 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American by 1 place. And I can attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room when you turn around and there is a male watching you undress while exposing himself. I can attest to the anger and frustration from these girls who had worked so hard and sacrificed so much to get to this point.
So people have disparaged her for now partnering up with TP UK and going and doing college talks because of this ordeal, and they're saying, oh, you're just a grifter, you're jumping on the right-wing bandwagon. No, you took her lifelong athletic dreams from her, and you, the regime, are pushing this on people, so she's totally justified from this ordeal to fight back. That's very authentic, what she's saying there.
Yes.
And also, it's very harrowing with the knowledge now that we have. If you go and look on our YouTube channel, we have a segment called Keep Your Fetish to Yourself. Someone found, and it was published in the Daily Wire, Leah Thomas's private Instagram account, and that features photos of Leah and his trans girlfriend lopping off their testicles on date night, and photos of women of questionable age in autogynephile posts. So it seems that he had a perverse incentive to undress in front of other women.
Sorry, I will not watch it.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So this is enough to make us doubt what NCAA is supposed to be in favor of, the values that they are supposed to support. They talk about focus on participants, but in this case, as Riley Gaines says, no one was notified.
Yeah.
And I don't see this as constituting focusing on the participants.
Because it's not about reciprocity. It's about an intersectional hierarchy. They've bought into the oppressor-oppressed paradigm, so anyone who is oppressed can get away with anything.
Yes, and it reminds me a bit of the rhetoric on Orwell's Animal Farm. They know everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others.
Yes.
Here we have a statement that is supposed to say that all participants are going to be taken care of, and the worries of all participants are going to somehow be accommodated and met, or they will count. But we see that there are some participants who are a bit more special, and that the NCAA is a bit more partial to them. So perhaps that's a facade.
2 legs good,
Yep.
3 legs better.
Double standard, one of the many that we have encountered. Okay, now the thing is that on the 6th of April, I think it was a Thursday, she was invited to give a talk at San Francisco State University. Now, I think that this is I've heard that this is a very woke part of California.
San Francisco? Yeah, could say that.
Yes, and what happened is that she gave a talk about her views on the issue and why she thinks that biological males should not be included on women's sports. And she talked about the unfairness of it, and she talked about her experience, because this is supposed to be an audience that constantly talks about lived experiences and how much they value the idea of a lived experience. Supposedly. They talk about their own lived experience, whatever that is supposed to mean, but they don't necessarily care about the lived experiences of others. Now, so what happened before we watch the video, what happens is that after the talk, a crowd stormed in and physically assaulted her, and they were threatening her. And the police officers and security officers who were there, they put her to a room for 3 hours. Outside there was a mob that was shouting at her, and they were, they were having fun. They were saying that they were demanding ransom. They were swearing at her. They were actually threatening her, and she was there for 3 hours. Let us watch the student mob.
It's just me. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm coming. I'm good. I'm good. Trust me. I'm good. Go ahead.
So we clearly...
Trans rights are human rights! Bye, bitch! Bye, bitch! You dress like a communist.
So we could put it on mute now.
Yeah, very ladylike behavior.
Yeah. So the thing is that it doesn't seem to me to be a group of people that are very much interested in listening to the other opinion. They don't seem to care about the lived experience of Riley Gaines and women who may think the same, but they may not be as articulate or vocal about it, or they may not be, to be fair to them, they may not be at the position to do so.
That sounds very polite, Stelios. I would say they're an ideologically possessed zombie horde.
No, these people are. I'm not talking about these people. I'm talking about, Riley Gaines. Yeah,
Yep.
You're basically correct. Yes, they're trying to. That's not civilized, and the aftermath is that after 3 hours, she was released. The police took her off. We saw on the video clearly police officers being there. It wasn't just campus security. We saw people who had the police sign on their backs, on the back of their outfits. So the question is, what happened? How come the police can't help you there? Let us look a bit about the aftermath. Now, let's look at this tweet from Ollie London. San Francisco State University, where students assaulted Riley Gaines and held her hostage, has blamed Riley for the promotion of violence, within quotation marks, and claimed that protesters who assaulted the women's swimming star were threatened, while calling the police who were protecting Riley Gaines as excessive and uncalled for. Now, of course, these are Associated Students president. They are saying that basically it was wrong that there was security there. Now, why was it wrong?
Because they couldn't tear her limb from limb.
Yes, so it's a very harrowing statement. Let us move forward. After that, Riley Gaines has made various appearances on GB News, on Fox News, and has given many interviews. Her message is simple, that the Biden administration has tried to make it sexual harassment for Riley Gaines to say, for instance, that biological males should not compete in women's sports, but it is not sexual harassment for Leah Thomas to use the same locker room as women. So that's one of the basic core, one of her basic core messages. Now, let us move a bit on the next video. Her video on Tucker Carlson.
Turning Point USA invited me to the campus. I delivered a very civil and respectful speech where I had great dialogue with even protesters who were participating in a sit-in. All of a sudden, after my speech, the room was stormed. The lights were turned off and I was rushed with no one there to escort me to a safe place. I was punched, I was hit multiple times, I was shoved, until finally we exited the room. But we could not leave because the protesters flooded the halls, and so I was pushed into a classroom along that hallway where I was barricaded in for 3 hours.
3 hours? Why didn't someone with a gun come and bring you to safety?
Because they were terrified. They were scared to put their hands on these people because they know what these people are capable of. These people yelled obscene, violent, vulgar things to both myself and the officers, I could tell, didn't feel comfortable putting them in a position that would mean they do their job, which is a really scary, chilling thought.
So I find this completely harrowing. We have the person who was attacked saying that police officers were afraid to actually do their job. And I think that this is a very bad sign that sometimes whenever law is not enforced and whenever we have people who do not do their job with respect to protecting the civil rights of citizens, it is only normalizing the idea that some people behave this way.
So I have a comment on that. I wanted to apologise if anyone saw me smirk during that, because obviously it's not a nice topic. It's just because I saw Tucker Carlson's face in the corner, and Tucker's slack-jawed face is always very amusing. But everything that Riley's gone through is horrible. I wanted to point out the fact that it's not just that they're not enforcing the law; it's they're deliberately enforcing the law unilaterally. This is a top-down imposition.
Yes. Yep.
San Francisco's mayor, London Breed, is hot on hate crime legislation on the city level. And so the police officers there know that if they restrain any of the violent trans activists, they themselves will lose their job because they are a protected, marginalized group. How can you be marginalized when you're endorsed by the state and not culpable for any of your actions? But intersectionality is brain rot. Anyway, so this is a top-down imposition of anarcho-tyranny. They have chosen a group of spiteful revolutionary mutants. They have immunized them from consequences because they are on the right side of history. And the fortunate thing for the oligarchs like Nancy Pelosi, who's the congresswoman for one of those districts in San Francisco, is that the more chaos there is on the ground, the more people are dependent on the government to tell them what arbitrary law is going to be imposed on them on that day. And so she can sit in Congress forever and make lots and lots of money and never have her power challenged.
Yes, and we see the disconcerting phenomenon of various, let's say, police officers who seem to take a kind of joy in it. They find it funny, like in the case where Billboard Chris was attacked in Canada some weeks ago, where we had an officer that she was clearly having fun with it.
There were lots of officers as well who are all too happy to enforce COVID lockdown laws, but as soon as Black Lives Matter protesters were toppling statues or swinging from the flag on the cenotaph, oh, no, it's okay, we have to let you go. For racial justice. It turns out that racial justice fights COVID-19.
Yes, and I think that we should show the double standards and expose the double standards of those who are in favor of this agenda whenever we can. Yeah. Because it's good for maintaining sanity.
Well, one of the most useful things to wake people up to the voraciousness of the social justice left was when Jordan Peterson would give perfectly reasonable campus speeches, and you would have people with megaphones screeching, banging on the walls and windows outside the lecture hall, or when Michael Knowles turns up to campus and they try and shoot him with a water gun of what they thought at the time was bleach and assault him. These people are delusional, and so are not kind of the people that you want to share a country with.
Exactly. And when they are selected as a protected group, a group that is by no means the majority of the population, but it is somehow treated as a special group, it has special preferential treatment, that means that basically someone gives them power. And we should always pose that question. Who gives them power? Who wants that lobby to, let's say, these people to have preferential treatment and get away with uncivilized behavior? Now, I want to say that this event was it went viral. Millions of people watched it. And some people from the left started criticizing the behavior of those people. And before we show you a clip from the discussion of the Young Turks about it, I want to say that I watched, there's a quarter, it's 15 minutes, okay? Right. Around 15, 16 minutes. And I watched Cenk and Anna Kasparian talking about the event. And to a point, I was happy with what I heard, because they said that was unacceptable behavior. Mm-hmm. It's completely counterproductive. It doesn't get you anywhere. That people who are in favor of the transgender ideology, they shouldn't take it as a given that people understand them. And there was a good point at some point where I think Cenk said that you cannot want to be an activist, you cannot want to be politically active on the one hand, but on the other hand want to say that, well, I don't need to educate you, which is a frequent, let's say, behavior when we see people who say, no, I know it. That's the truth. I have an infallible conception of the truth. If you don't agree with me, you're a bigot.
Yeah, it's not my job. Educate yourself.
Yes. So up to a point, I think they were speaking sense.
Right.
But
When did he start talking about horses?
But let us watch this clip.
So we've got to find a way to convince the average person. Here, I'll give you the last example, guys. So, for example, when you talk about sports and trans people participating in the sports, I think it's an interesting and legitimate debate to talk about hormone blockers and how much of an effect they have on athletic ability.
Agreed, yeah.
Right? So when trans folks that are activists like Benny Carollo or anyone else makes that point, that's good. You're engaging, and a lot of people don't know that. Okay, so that's great. Do that, right? And that might change some minds. By the way, and then it's okay if the right winger or the moderate or whoever or the newbie or even me says, hey, you know what? I'm not sure I'm quite convinced yet, but let's keep talking about it, right? How much do the hormone blockers affect athletic performance? That's a legitimate debate.
Yeah, exactly.
When the right wingers say, oh, trans people are mentally ill and we should take away their rights, that is not a legitimate debate. We fight back ferociously on that, but politically and rhetorically, because they're gonna win on the politics of it and they're gonna keep passing those atrocious laws unless you convince a majority of Americans that you are right.
So basically, did you spot it?
Yeah, the only debate we can have is about transing the kids earlier, and it's unacceptable to reject the ideology outright on the premise that men can become women.
So in general, when people talk about laws, of course, it's going to be a bit abstract and general. It's not going to be particularly enlightening. But the point is, when he talks about laws that are passed against a preferential treatment of a group as atrocious, basically, there is no debate to be had there. So they're simultaneously try to present themselves as pro-debate, but actually it's not a debate. It's actually a paternalistic discussion or communication where we have a segment of the population that is treated preferentially, and it goes like that. They know what they're saying. They should talk to those who are willing to listen, but not those who are willing to disagree.
Yeah, because they've already agreed on the end point of the dialectic, and so they just have to marginalize the perspectives that would slow them down. And anyone who is not yet informed as to the atrocities of trans ideology, well, this is a new angle of attack from which we can capture them and bully them into silence and compliance.
I'm sorry, Cenk, that's not dialogue enough. There isn't room for dialogue. That's just preaching.
Why are you saying sorry to Cenk? Do you ever think he was an honest actor?
So let's move to the next clip about speaking about laws now. Not the next video, please. If we can go to the
tab.
To the tab. Yeah, okay. So we have Biden's proposed legislation. So Biden is proposing, he announced potential changes to Title IX regulations. Now, some context. Title IX regulations are, it's called Title IX of the Education Amendment of 1972, which is a federal civil rights law in the U.S. that prohibits sex-based discrimination in any school or any other education program that receives funding from the federal government.
It was to ensure that women could have their own sports teams.
Yes. So I'll read just a bit from this article. Don't worry, those of you who find it very weird when I read whole articles, I won't do that. The U.S. Department of Education announced potential changes to the Title IX regulations this Thursday, presenting plans to bar blanket bans of transgender student athletes but allowing limitations on a case-by-case basis. The proposed policy, which will apply to public K-12 schools and colleges, universities, and other educational institutions that receive federal funding, finds schools that categorically ban transgender students from participating in sports teams consistent with their gender identity are in violation of Title IX. The department will still allow schools to limit the participation of transgender students in some cases to allow fairness in competition. Now, they're going after the money in a way. It's like, if you don't agree with if you don't comply with pushing forward gender ideology, you're not going to receive federal funding.
But it's also the attitude of, on a case-by-case basis, we'll let transgender activists in. Okay, so you're making it completely arbitrary, and you're saying that, if they just dislocate your eye socket a little bit in the case of Fallon Fox, or if they just utterly blow out women in competitions in the swim meets and destroy their college athlete dreams a little bit, it's okay. It's literally the Dolph Lundgren perspective from Rocky IV. If he dies, he dies. I had to make a reference. You've been making Arnold references off air all the time.
Sure.
I had to match it.
Okay, now let's go to the next article. You see, I don't have time to read it, but if you're interested in seeing how California Governor Gavin Newsom is trying to silence debate, you should definitely read that, because this shows actually how the woke left is treating the whole matter. Now, and let's go to the next clip, because it's good, since we're talking about testosterone, I think we should end with that clip. It's good to, and Cenk was saying that we should have the debate. I searched a bit, some world expert on testosterone. He is Professor David Handelsman. I think he is based in Australia. And this is a conversation that was 11 months ago, but I think he is really informative when he talks about the effects of testosterone and how it affects the dynamics between men and women, especially after puberty. Let's watch.
David, you're a world authority on testosterone and its effects on sports performance. How does testosterone impact the body?
Look, the male physical advantages in sports really stem from male puberty. Before puberty, boys and girls can compete equally, but after puberty, men have 20 to 30 times the production of testosterone compared to women. And this leads to larger and stronger muscles, bigger and stronger heart, bigger and more lung capacity, and longer and stronger bones, as well as a higher hemoglobin. And all of those things contribute to sports performance, to the improvement in sports performance.
What is the extent of these male advantages?
If we consider the times and distances, like throwing or jumping in athletics and swimming, the advantages that males have are between 10 to 20% in virtually all of those events. To put that into context, if you look at female world records in all the swimming and athletic events, every year hundreds of men surpass those performances, and thousands of them do it over time. And the most telling thing is that at the age of 14 or 15, boys at that age, in early to mid-puberty, already surpass female world records, pointing out that it's male puberty that's so instrumental in that. So that makes it very unfair to have male-bodied athletes in female events.
So a 10 to 20% discrepancy is a really big discrepancy when we're talking about championship races. I think we should end with this because I'm a bit sensitive about time.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I just think it's obvious that if you were a good faith actor, you would not stick a grown man in the pool with women, and you would not try to excuse a mob of radical activists chasing her down the hallway for saying, "You ruined my dreams."
Well put.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the premium podcast, this episode on Is Jesus Christ a Socialist? If you'd like to find out what else has been put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.